Marvel's Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is Marvel's newest Spider-Man TV show, and it's actually such a breath of fresh air. Comparing it directly to its predecessor, simply called Spider-Man from 2017, it's night and day that this show is actually how you do a Spider-Man TV show done correctly. Season 1 just wrapped up, and I have a lot to say, and I just want to get my thoughts out to you as soon as possible, so light spoiler warning ahead for Season 1. First off, let's start with the elephant in the room, that being the show's animation style. When the show was first announced, as a lifelong Spider-Man fan, I was honestly extremely excited to see the new take on the character. The concept art looked spectacular, and it felt like it was ripped straight out of a comic book. Then, unfortunately, I saw some leaked stills, and the show had a few promo clips that was going around, and the more I saw, the worse and worse the show looked for me. But fortunately enough, and for many others as well, the show actually looks pretty good. The overall aesthetic of the show is very clear. This is straight out of a comic book, and it's supposed to be Spider-Man coming from the comic book to the silver screen, and it's meant to look exactly like one's. Yes, at times the action bits do look a little lackluster and slow, but I'm really enjoying the series so far and hoping that that's something the team can just iron out in Season 2. The way that these characters talk and interact is basically perfect for this art style, but the action is really the main issue I have with the animation style. But again, I hope this gets ironed out in Season 2. At worst, it looks a little choppy at first, but honestly, I got used to it very quickly. This version of Peter Parker is a kid. Through and through throughout the show, it is very clear that he is a freshman that's either 14 or 15 years old. And this Peter is a nerd. He absolutely has zero friends and doesn't know anyone at the beginning of the series. Because he saves this random girl named Nico on his first day of school, he now has one friend. Good for him. And she's about as loyal as it gets. This Peter Parker, I believe, is done actually really well. This is the Peter Parker that has the heart that we all know and love. This is seen countless times throughout Season 1, and I absolutely love it. His take on Spider-Man is absolutely everything that we needed from the MCU that we unfortunately did not get. Yes, this Spider-Man has a mentor being Norman Osborn, and I'll get to that in a second, but this version of Spider-Man is very clearly looking out for the little guy, and he wants to do what's right, and is honestly just a great overall representation of what Spider-Man should be. From episode 1, it's very clear that the writers and everyone on this team gets what Spider-Man is and what he should be and what it takes to be Spider-Man. One of the things that's most important to me when it's coming to a Spider-Man TV show is the TV show cast in particular. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but last year I watched every Spider-Man animated TV show out there, and to me at least, it was very clear that not a lot of the series could handle and nail a full ensemble cast, but thankfully this series does. Instead of sticking Peter with the characters that we know he's normally associated with, like MJ, Gwen, Harry, Flash Thompson, he's now with a different cast of characters. New exciting fresh takes on these characters that don't have a lot of representation. There's new and exciting characters in this cast, or fresh takes on previously established characters and other types of media. We have characters like Nico, Lonnie Lincoln, Pearl, and yeah, Harry Osborn, but this is a new fresh take on him that I actually quite like. Each character has their own overarching side plot that gets the audience invested, but also pulls either Spider-Man or Peter into that story as well. Take Lonnie, for example. He's the all-star quarterback, and he joins a gang at the beginning of Season 1 to save his younger brother, and we get to watch throughout Season 1 how this affects not only him, but his family, his girlfriend Pearl, Peter, Spider-Man, and everyone around him. This is exactly the type of overarching plot and arc that every single character, including Peter, Nico, Harry, and Norman Osborn, gets in this show. Speaking of, let's talk about the villains, because this show and the showrunners in particular are absolutely cooking with the villains. Spider-Man starts off taking down jewel thieves with robotic enhancements that were actually made from Doc Ock, and then progresses to fight small Russian gangs, and then finally takes down the big bad of Season 1, that being the Scorpion. But in typical Spider-Man fashion, this first encounter with the Scorpion does not go well for Peter. Spoiler warning here, but this is absolutely the best fight in the season, and it actually ends with Peter actually almost dying, getting pierced through the chest from the Scorpion, then to be saved by Norman Osborn, who is remote piloting a glider, teasing the Green Goblin future to come in the series. Speaking of Norman, in this series, Norman knows that Peter is Spider-Man and is his direct mentor. Yes, this is a literal direct homage to the Tony-Peter relationship in the MCU, except it's very clear that Norman is using Peter for his own nefarious and personal benefit, and we see hints of that all throughout Season 1 and even more in the Season 1 finale. Norman gives Peter his suit, just as Tony gives Peter his suit in the MCU, and he knows that he's Spider-Man. At first, to be honest, I did not like this and did not like that they were setting up Norman to be a type of mentor for Peter, but it's very clear that they're actually setting him up to be a huge series villain that I wouldn't be surprised if Norman is the overall series villain, and the big reveal would come similar to the Doc Ock betrayal in the PS4 Spider-Man game. I cannot wait for this. I think it's going to be amazing. I could talk about Norman all day long for this series in this video. He's one of the most interesting characters. But to me, the best thing about this show is the writing. The writing in the show is phenomenal. There's actually little to no fluff. Every episode and every scene as well has an important purpose. There's zero fluff or filler in this show. There will be important episodes and moments that you will miss if you're on your phone or not paying attention. The writing makes you invested in these characters in this series, and that's honestly the best part about this show, because without good writing, well, you'd be getting another 2017 Marvel Spider-Man, and I can speak for everyone when I say no one wants that. A few one-off pros that this show does extremely well is the sound design. The sound design in this show is amazing, whether it be the Scorpion's mechanical tail or Peter's web shooters, or even the sound that it makes when people get hit in the head with poles. Everything from the sound design to the music in this show is phenomenal. Another thing that I think this show does really well is actually pretty funny. There are moments in this show where I actually found myself chuckling out loud, and for me at least, that's a rare thing when watching TV shows, especially Spider-Man TV shows, and I'm looking directly at you, Ultimate Spider-Man. In my opinion, no show is perfect, and of course there's going to be a few cons, and I do have some cons for this show as well. The first thing that I could think of is the animation style at times can be very stiff. People have pointed out that in fights like the Daredevil one in particular, it looks like the characters are stiff or fighting at 0.5 speed. If that were to be cleaned up in Season 2, then honestly the show would be a 10 out of 10 for me, or maybe really close, but with the animation and the style of the show, I feel like this is ripped straight out of a comic book, and it fits the part. It looks really well. I absolutely love the way that this show establishes their shots with the comic book paneling, and they also use this paneling throughout different moments to show direct character contrasts or parallels, which I think is brilliant. Now, there are a lot of direct MCU-ish details that are, again, homages in this show, but I'm not going to point all of them out, because if you want to watch another YouTube video where someone points out all the Easter eggs as well, then you go do that, but that's not what I'm doing in this video. There are references in this show that you will notice them, but they're not in your face about it, which I think is very nice. Now, a few huge spoilers that I couldn't not talk about that stood out to me, I wanted to mention again is that Scorpion fight, because it's so brutal and so good, and I absolutely love it. This then results in the second to last episode where Peter fights the Scorpion again. He has PTSD, and I absolutely love that. You see the ramifications of his previous encounters, and in that fight, Lonnie Lincoln actually gets his powers, and he's slowly now turning into Tombstone, which is going to be amazing. At one point, Peter in that fight just goes silent and locks in after thinking that Lonnie Lincoln dies, and he does no more quips. He almost kills the Scorpion, and this happens because in his head, having Norman Osborn as his mentor, he is telling Peter not to hold back, and he has to take care of his enemies because they will kill him if he doesn't kill them. And thankfully, Lonnie saves him and tells him that he's a hero and that he doesn't need to do this. But pieces like this is what makes the series stand out to me as being brilliant with the writing style. Everything flows and everything calls back to each other and is written carefully and well together, and I absolutely love it. Another thing that I really like is Nico and Peter's friendship, not relationship, but friendship. It's very clear that they're platonic and they're only friends, but this is going to be a core value of Peter moving forward, which is very obvious, and I absolutely love that he has someone that is in his corner no matter what. Something else that I wanted to point out in spoiler warnings is Norman is obviously trying to replicate Spider-Man's DNA, of course, to maybe have a clone saga in the future, which I think would be really interesting. And speaking of Norman, his whole intern project that he had for all of Season 1, he's of course using it for his own selfish purposes, trying to create a portal to go into outer space, which results in Doctor Strange time traveling and makes a time loop, which explains how Peter gets his spider bite. That's really interesting. I did not see that coming. And then, oh yeah, last big spoiler, Peter's dad is alive and well and is in jail. I don't know what that's about, but I'm sure we'll see more about that, and it's just really interesting to me. Again, there's a lot of other spoiler stuff that I could talk about, a lot of other Marvel MCU Easter eggs for Spider-Man fans as well, but I'm not going to dive too deep into all of that. In my opinion, this show tracks very high up for me compared to other Spider-Man TV shows. Just from Season 1, I truly do think that this show has the potential to be better than the Spectacular Spider-Man. Yeah, I know a lot of you are probably already typing or hear that and say, there's no way, is this just recency bias? Which maybe it could be, I don't know, but Season 3 is already confirmed and in the works, so obviously Season 2 is in the works as well, the showrunners have already said. So if the series doesn't let up in the overall writing and quality and keeps progressing and improving upon itself for at least 2 more seasons to get to Season 3, I think the argument is definitely there for this being better than Spectacular Spider-Man though. Overall, I give Season 1 a very high 9 out of 10. If the animation gets cleaned up a little bit and they can hone in on the animation and action pieces, I think it will, then this show will bump up for a 10 out of 10 for me. But just being honest, I really love this show and really hope it sticks to landing in the further seasons to come. Honestly though, what did you guys think? You think I'm crazy giving it a 9 out of 10? I really enjoyed this series, and I want to hear you guys' thoughts as well on this, because I really enjoyed it, and hopefully everyone else does, so we can get to maybe even 5 seasons with this show. Who knows? But ultimately, thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. It means a lot to me. If you please consider liking and subscribing. Getting me to 10,000 subscribers is a goal I have of mine, so hopefully we can get that soon. But let me know your thoughts in the comments in this series and the video below. Take care.